Well, happy Wednesday to you again. I hope you've been enjoying this time we got to spend on Wednesdays over the past several weeks. Also, too, I hope you can hear me okay because right outside my wall, like right there and behind me on this wall, like I'm in the corner of the building here, right outside both walls is Connect Camp. And you're getting a little taste of what I've heard all week. The music just stopped, but that was a little thunderstruck that was going on. Really a good playlist that goes on. If you like all sorts of music, just come hang out and you're going to get to hear a lot of music. Our kids have had a blast this week here at Connect Camp, getting to interact with these students from Georgia and from the South, and really getting a good opportunity to learn more about Jesus and experience what it's like to live for Him. Hey, I was doing some reading this morning in Philippians chapter 4. I'm going to preach this Sunday, and I'm talking about a topic that is a very big topic, talking about worry and anxiety. Really talking about Matthew chapter 6 when Jesus tells us not to worry and to focus on the kingdom instead. But I've been reading a lot this week alongside that in Philippians chapter 4. Last week I talked about Philippians 2 with you guys, but Philippians 4, I love this passage because there are two really well-known sections out of Philippians 4 that I think really can draw us in, that we need to make sure we're practicing and reading on a regular basis. In Philippians chapter 4, in verse 6, Paul tells us to not worry about anything. Instead, he says, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He's done, and you'll experience God's peace, which exceeds anything that we can understand. His peace, Paul says, His peace will guard your hearts and your minds as you live in Christ Jesus. This is a verse or a set of verses about trust. Trust sometimes can be difficult because we sometimes have a hard time trusting something that we can't see. And God isn't like tangible for us. Like God doesn't appeal to our actual senses. We can't see Him. We can't touch Him or hear Him. He doesn't appeal to those physical senses that we have. It's a belief in our heart. And sometimes it's hard to trust that you can't control. Again, I'm going to talk about this more Sunday, and I would encourage you to be here for that. But what Paul is getting at here is if we're able to look behind us and see what God has done for us, it's easier to trust Him moving forward. He says there in verse 6, tell God what you need and thank Him for all that He's done. I wonder for you, if you get in moments where you struggle to maybe trust God, can you look back and see where you've come? Now, it's easy sometimes to think, well, God hasn't done much for me because we look through our own lens. We think about what we want. We think about what we need. God doesn't always work on our timing. At least He doesn't work on my timeline. There have been many times I've asked God for something and I've just kind of had to sit and wait. And I look back at it and think, man, God, you could have just snapped your fingers and everything would have been ready to go. Why didn't you do that? Well, God doesn't normally ask me for my opinions on those types of things. Parents, if you have kids, you understand this, right? You know better than your kids know in terms of what they need. God knows what we need. And the hard part is trusting Him. But here's some good news to go along with that. Because Paul goes on in this chapter and he gives another verse that is extremely well known, and to be honest, is probably one that we pull out of context quite often. But down in Philippians 4, starting in verse 11, Paul says that not that I was ever in need, but I've learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Now that last little verse there, that's a verse that we all probably know. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. We like to use that and think that because I have Jesus, there's nothing I can't do. I used to write that on my cleats for football and soccer games. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, including, wait for it, sit on the bench because I wasn't that good at those sports. Like I can do all things through Christ, right? I can't bench press 300 pounds or dunk a basketball. Okay? I can't sing like some people can sing. We can't literally do everything, but what Paul's saying here is that it doesn't matter what we have or don't have. What matters is that through Jesus, we can accomplish anything. Now again, go back to a moment ago talking about the idea of trust. Sometimes it's hard to trust God because we want like God to show up and prove himself every time so we can trust him all over again. That's not how trust works. Like we don't trust in someone or something because they prove it every time. We trust because they've proven it in the past. God has proven himself to us. Sometimes we have to step back and humble ourselves to remember that, because we want God to reprove himself every single time. But we look back and we see where God has taken us, where God has brought us, how he's led us through difficult times and dark valleys. And sometimes he's done that and we didn't even realize he was doing it till we stop and look back and say, man, you were right there with me. So I want to challenge you as we're moving forward and challenge you again, be here Sunday because we're going to talk more about this heavy topic. When times seem tough, trust God. When times seem good, trust God. Sometimes it's harder to trust God when times are good because we don't think that we need him. But it's showing itself to me, especially here lately. I've tried to get in a better habit of making sure I'm humbling myself before God every day. I'm spending more and more time in his word every day, praying to him every day, spending time with his people every day. And my trust in him is growing. So I want to challenge you. Find a way to humble yourself and stop and pause and look to him and trust him more every single day.